Blessings, everybody. We out here handling kingdom business, just allowing God's visions to come to fruition, as He's continually to utilize, people who have not only the vision but the heart to not only help people, but know what help is and have gotten the help that needs to be presented to others so they may receive help. So I got a good brother here, Brother Kurt Skinner. I mean, a brother, he's been in the system, and so he recognizes what needs to be done and what he needed at one time. So now he's providing that for other people. So I'm gonna let him tell a little bit about, what he's doing.
All right, well, thanks for having me, Darnell. I just want to start out by saying I met my brother Darnell probably a little over a year ago at a New Directions prison ministry based out of Lansing, Michigan, at an appreciation dinner. And this brother blessed me with boxes of resources for these men inside and the ones coming home. I recently reconnected with him through Justin Wiseman, who was the director of New Directions Prison Ministries. And here we sit again, a little over a year later. This brother is blessing me with resources, and just wants to join in on the mission, the vision of continuing to help these brothers on the inside, but also giving them hope and building their heart on the outside.
And that's what it's all about, because you know better than anybody.
Yeah, it's a blessing to be sitting here in this building. I recently was voted unanimously as executive director of My Just Cause. It's a local nonprofit here in Lansing, and also we're sitting inside of this giant transitional home. It was the Old Teen Challenge next to Consumers Energy. We plan to house up to 48 men by the end of 2026. Our goal is to house at least 22 by Halloween of this year.
Yeah, so that's good, man. You got the vision all laid out, and I mean, the building is nice. By the way, we're live here in Lansing, Michigan, my hometown. But, right now, it's so needed, brother, for, men to become men. That's one of the things that I work on the most, because, a lot of men have never seen men.
Well, it's that word you opened up with. You use that word kingdom man. And so not only kingdom men, but from the heart. And it's funny you use that word as, it's kind of like an inside joke between the old chaplain at Ingham and the men inside that I talk to, and they know it's real. But I always go with the heart. We talk about the heart, because unless you change your heart, like the word says, everything flows out of your heart, whether good or evil. So trying to get these men to understand that they got to start looking internal, because nothing external of their heart, of their being, it can change anything from generational curses to addiction, from the abandonment, rejection of fatherlessness, and all those things. So I'm trying to get men to look inside into their heart.
And that's the thing, because we never been taught that, okay, it's okay to cry. I had put out a video before. We all need a trusted shoulder.
Absolutely. And those are those real things that I relate to these men inside. And I've never regretted my past, whether it being fatherless and being rejected, being addicted, loving of money, hustling dope, moving packages, trafficking them on the highway. But I've never regretted my path of going inside North Carolina DOC for several years, nor returning when I fell 9 months later. I went back inside the jail. But looking back, I see God has used this. He's used this to weave it into my blanket. Though it looks ragged and broken from the beginning, God uses those broken things to weave a beautiful picture. And so I can see now that God raised me up to be one of the men that I go talk to inside. So I can sit down with them and say, hey man, I'm broken inside, or I was broken inside, but God has healed my heart. And I'm here as a calling to come back and heal your heart as well.
So that healing the heart brings on another level of love that, even though you never received it, but once you, became a kingdom free man,
baby.
You know what I mean? That allows you to love on a whole nother level, because it's like, it prepares you to, I'm gonna say this, even when you come out the streets into the kingdom, you still gonna need parts of that cold heart dealing with some people.
I mean, that's just the character that's weaved into us, right? And I address that with men as well, right? And I'm trying to teach men also to keep it simple, right? That being a follower of Jesus Christ, being a kingdom man, isn't ritualistic and it isn't religious, right? We don't earn our way in by any kind of work. So I'm trying to teach men to be simple with it. to walk wholehearted, right? Because the word talks about your heart is not an organ inside. Your heart is your entire being, right? Top of the crown to the soles of the feet is our heart. It's our entire being that was created. And our entire being has to be turned towards God. As a soldier, as a warrior, seeking purpose, seeking that healing that you talked about. And, I want to touch on that briefly with that healing thing. I became a certified instructor of a course inside the jails called Healing the Wounded Heart. And so I'm about to do my second one this year inside of Ingham, and then also bring it over to Eaton and introduce a course there because they don't have any resources for men there. And what it is, it's a mental health and a heart trauma course, right? And of course it's kingdom based and Christ based, but it really gets men to look inside, and not only that, but to open up the trunk. Because as broken men, we want to hide those broken places, right? Our demons, our thought patterns, these things. But we're teaching men through this course, unlock that trunk that you keep carrying for this whole journey, right? Yeah. Because we can say we accept Christ and we're walking, but we're not free. And we're only free when we unlock that lock and throw it away, and we lift that lid and we start to talk about those vulnerable places, right? Whether things that were done to us, right? Yeah. By bad fathers and mothers, start talking about those things openly, but just letting all these things go, because until we travel without that baggage, we never truly become free.
Man, you got to open up that part where you said, where we act like the healing don't, like we try to cover it up, or we try to act like it don't exist. Open that up.
There you go, and you know where that comes from, right? I always bring them back to Genesis. So even if they're a beginner, we talk about Adam and Eve in a garden, and we talk about that fig leaf. We talk about after they sinned before God, and that they were naked and vulnerable, that here's Adam holding a fig leaf in front of him, right? Trying to cover up, right? So I use that to relate to, man, that when we start getting into our drug addictions, our alcoholism, you can get deep, right, into collecting women, which I've done, right? Trying to look for healing in the wrong places, right? But it's all these things, and I try to tell guys, because when we're a broken boy inside still immature, when we're a broken boy still, at 50 years old, right? I recognize this was me a couple years ago. When I recognized I was still that broken boy inside, right? But I started seeing the alcohol or the materials that I would buy. You mentioned old schools, right? I started collecting cars and glasses and all these things, but I knew my behaviors were rooted in the rejection and the abandonment. And what I'm trying to get to with this covered up thing is human nature, like Adam, to try to cover up our faults, to try to cover up our brokenness and hide it from the world and put on this fake facade that we only want the world to see. So I'm teaching guys now, put that baby blanket down. Put that baby blanket down, put that bottle down, put that drug down, and become free, man. So I'm just walking with these men just as much as I can in these jails, weekly, monthly, just being in there acting, just constantly sitting with them. So.
And this is the thing that men don't discuss, the hurt, because like I tell the guys in prison, look, we cry in, my classes, all that tough stuff, going out to the yard, and, we deal with stuff, because one thing I tell them too is like, we've all been molested in some form, spiritually, sexually, mentally, more mentally than anything.
There you go.
But men don't want to talk about that. Because I tell them sometimes maybe you need to call that person that did something to you and say, hey, look, I forgive you. And so that brings a freedom within yourself by being free. And it also frees them, because some of them, they going through life knowing they did it and wondering if you remember.
I tell men, I remind them all the time, let the tears flow, and I give them real stories, right, where I was, frustrated with external attacks of people close to my circle, right, different things like that. But there's days where I would leave work and I couldn't even turn on music, but all I could do was let tears flow, right, all the way home. Just feeling like, man, I'm broken inside, man, as hard as I work, I can't figure things out, or the harder I work, I get nothing but resistance from people. So I let guys know, hey, I've cried and I do cry. And so every time I go inside these blocks and sit with these men, there's men crying, but that means God is touching those hearts.
Because when you have a real conversation that a lot of men are afraid to have, because they've been told they would be punks for having this conversation, it really frees people. It allows them to be free men.
Well, that's why men like me and you, That's why men like me and you are bringing the real message in a real way to them, right? Just no filter, no baloney, right? Just bringing it to them, right? That's the only way they can become free and ready to face those fears and insecurities. And I got to give you a quick one from last week. I was sitting inside a gym in Eaton County, and we're talking, and a guy related to a famous pastor that I listened to. He asked me where I got this wisdom saying from, and I shared it, and he started getting excited, saying he saw the man in Grand Rapids, and he goes, when I was doing good, he goes, I was out there, laying tile, and when I was doing good. And so I stopped, and I said, can I ask you a question? And he goes, yeah. And I looked at him amongst a room full of men, right? And I said, when are you going to stop saying when I was doing good and make that a lifestyle, right? Because all these men that we talk to, inside or out, they'll always say, oh man, I was on top, right? That old story of, oh, I had this. I had the 20s and all this stuff, but I lost it all, right? Everybody wants to reminisce about what they had, right? Instead of really looking inward like we're talking about today, right? And like, man, I got to break this cycle. And that's why I'm bringing them the strength and the power through Jesus Christ that they can break it, because I'm showing them that God allowed me to break the generational curse of fatherlessness, addiction. My Almighty Father could give me the wisdom and understanding to walk this road and be a warrior for others.
Oh man, I got to open that up when you said, cats. That conversation is annoying when all people talk about what they got and what they had. Well, let's talk about what you have and the ability to yet receive when you are on the path to freedom.
Yeah, what do you have now, right? But that's that hard part we're talking about today is facing reality, right?
Man, I'm trying not to get up and run. Man.
Right. But I'm just trying to get these men to face themselves right where they're at, right? But I'm giving them the true message, right? Because I got guys going in, getting sentenced to 9 years. I'm just seeing it every week, right? Some 2 years, some 9 years, and all these things. But the message I'm trying to get to them now is there isn't no, I'll wait till the day I get out, right? Or I'm going to change then, right? It's that old human thing, right? But the whole time they're in there thinking on bad things, plotting and all these things. Because I fell when I got out, right? So I'm trying to lead these men so they don't make the same mistakes. But I'm showing them use this valuable time, whether it's jail time, MDOC time, and let them know that you're not falling behind or going to get left behind. It's all weaved into God's plan. So whether you're gone for 9 years or not, God's going to restore, whether it's an old spouse, new spouse, relationships with children, if they turn their backs, whether they wrote you or sent you money, you got to be able to let go and endure and carry that heavy cross and trust that God, who says in his word, will restore with the locusts of Eden.
Yeah, because it's like you got to have that mindset of from this day forth. And that's one thing that I'm going to say myself, it took a long time for me to forgive myself for, hurting families, slanging dope, and, all the women I had and stuff like that I thought, hey, look, I ain't trying to be your man, but we can play. Right. And I'm thinking that's cool, but, after I came to Christ and started learning to love, I recognized I had to make a few phone calls and tell some women, look, I'm sorry, I was unaware of how you felt, because I was riding with one of the ladies that, I used to mess around with. I've been in Christ maybe like 6 years, so we hung out and went to dinner. She said, I really liked you. I was just waiting for you to, approach me with, being a couple. And I was like, I thought we had an agreement, but, I might get in trouble for saying this, women think different from men, because I was real pimpish. I got out to bed with her, and then go try to holler at her mama.
Hey, that's just the fleshly ways, right? Yeah. And we're all vulnerable to that. I want to touch on something you said, and you talked about this moment forward, and the huge word that nails that is presence, right? So God's word, and God is calling us to be present. This ties into everything we talked about today, where we want to not only run from our past, but we want to run from everything we're facing today, right? How far our life has fallen. I'm in this bunk, nobody's visiting me, nobody's calling me, sending me money, right? But I'm teaching these men, right, the key to change your whole heart now is being in the present moment, right? Because you're going to have these same trials on the outside, and you just got to face them straight up as a warrior in God's strength and power and be present in the moment.
Man, and then the thing too, even when you present that moment, you got to recognize, okay, now I got to be present up here. It's a never-ending journey. It's levels to being present. Okay, I wasn't present for myself right here, but now I'm present for me. So now I can be present for other people. That goes back to what I was talking about first of all, we know what help is, and we have gotten help. So now we can go help others, like Jesus told Peter, after you have strengthened yourself, go back and strengthen your brother.
And how is all this earned? It's earned by paying dues. Right, my brother? Everything is earned by paying dues. And so these lessons that I speak of, and I know I speak from strength, it's because God has brought me into some dark places. You know, I've been in the dark caves of depression, like King David, right? Carrying this calling from over 25 years ago from a prison bed, right? So I knew I was called, you know, and chosen as a king to lead a great mission. But man, my life was nothing but spears thrown at me, right? Like Saul did to David, right? I'm sitting here trying to make beautiful music for people and build businesses, but it seemed like, you know, all hell was throwing the gates at me to kill me. And so I've had to pay, you know, and the dues don't stop, right? That's every day we're here with breath, but I've had to pay dues of these lessons, man, to learn that I got to become present. Because where I failed is to escape the present. What do? We either try to reminisce about the old times, right? Man, I was running the block, man. I was the kingpin of the city, right? Or I had 9 girls and 9 cars, but we want to reminisce. But the worst one was, because I was a mess inside, is I was looking to the future for this beautiful picture that God is promising, right? Because he always told me in my heart that I would have a reentry home, providing housing for men, that I would drive to these prisons and these jails and give these guys rides to the home, give them clothes, and give them more of anything, heart guidance, right? But so a lot of years have passed, you know, since that promise and those callings, and that's why it's so important to teach men also being patient and enduring the cross. But the one important thing I want to say today, because you opened up talking about heart. First of all, to change heart, but 2, we got to write the word on the tablets of our heart. But also these visions and these dreams and these callings that God gives us, we need to write those on our heart. And that's written in Habakkuk 2 and 3.
Yeah.
Habakkuk 2 and 3 says, write it down plain on tablets of your heart. And though it tarries, it will surely come. And here it is 25 years later from a prison bed, God is showing me that though visions may tarry, they will surely come. And they're written in his plan.
And that, when you said paying dues, what it entails to me is being subject, submit, and oh man, I'll forget the main one. And a level of surrender.
Man, you nailed all the words, right? First of all, you got to submit your whole being.
Yeah.
You got to submit your whole being. You can't have any skeletons in the closet. You know, we think we can hide darkness from the light, but we can't, right? So we do got to submit. And surrender was another lesson I had to learn, right? Because I thought I was surrendered as a believer and pursuing it, right? Going inside, walking in my calling. But what I found out was I was still lost in the future of thriving businesses or a home like this open, right? I was always caught in the beautiful picture because it's back to that numbing thing. I was still looking for something external to make me feel better, to give me strength. But God has continually brought me through darkness and through lessons to teach me that I don't need to wait for a future picture, that I need to be fully present today as a warrior and guarding my words and my actions and make sure they all do what? Do everything towards his will, which the armor book opened up to today with the soldier on his knees.
Yeah,
that we're walking out his will and not our own.
It's a blessing, man. I'm glad I finally got a chance to catch up with you, because when you called me, man, you don't know, I had just prayed that God would send me an incentive blessing. And here you call me that your dream is coming to fruition because you continue to walk in purpose. So this is a blessing for me, seeing what God has done for you. So that's what we want to convey to the people today. Continue to walk into purpose and hold on to your dream. So you got anything you want to share in closing?
I think I just want to close up on that last word you brought up before you talked about submission and surrender, and that was the word subject, right? And the reason I want to touch on that is because when you look at David, when he was just a scrawny shepherd boy in the fields, right? But he had those dreams and those visions in his heart and his mind, and he kept walking it out no matter what. So what I want to remind men is no matter where you're at in this journey, whether you're inside and you feel trapped, you feel behind, whether you're on the outside and you just can't seem to get it together, we've got to lower ourselves. This goes back to humility under Jesus Christ. We got to lower ourselves and humble ourselves to be a subject. We really do. We got to be a subject. Just like Karate Kid, right? We got to learn to wax on, wax off, right?
Yeah.
Well, we all want to be the master, and that's the problem with human beings. We all want to put ourselves on a pedestal. with a title and a position and hand out orders, right? But we don't want to do what Jesus Christ did, and that's submit himself to the lowest form of man, and to be spit on, be rejected, and to take on the heaviness of the cross. And that's what we got to do. So we got to lower ourselves and be a subject, walk and receive these lessons, and then God in his time will open up the door to be a king and to rule over that purpose that we're talking about today.
That's what the Bible says. God has made everything beautiful in his time. So everything that we go through, it may seem like God taking us all over the river and through the woods and wherever the house we go.
There we go.
But we're actually going to end up right in that place where he has prepared for us and predestined for us and the person he projected us to be.
You know, my greatest fear, as we wrap up, my greatest fear is what you just touched on, and that's what the Israelites did in the wilderness, right? Not one of them from that generation survived and went on to the promised land. Because God was providing for them. Not only did he set them free from the mighty hand of Pharaoh and brought them across the Red Sea, but he provided for them, protected them, taught them lessons, was trying to speak to their heart, but they would not humble their heart and receive these lessons. They didn't want to pay dues. All they wanted was what? They want to hear about this promised land. But that's why we can't get there until we're prepared inside, right? But my greatest fear is dying in the wilderness. And that's what kept me pursuing in my weakest moments. My weakest moments in the caves, dark caves of depression was, I can't die here. I got this calling deep inside of me. I can't die here. So I got to receive these hard lessons of not looking too far ahead, letting go of anything external that binds me or chains me down, and keep pursuing that calling and that purpose.
Man, that's deep, brother. I mean, we can go on and on and on, but one thing I want to say is, if you have a ministry, man, I don't know why my mind just went blank, or whatever you're trying to do, a ministry, an organization, or whatever, it's okay to have people with degrees. You know, degrees are fine in their place. I mean, if you're a doctor, a lawyer, or you a accountant or something like that. But when it comes to really helping men, you know, whether in the prison system or just the streets, you're gonna need people with experience. Education can't teach the things that we talked about when it concerns a heart transformation. I read something years ago. It says, you know, a lot of people attend church. They have man, all my mind going blank, but a life modification, but they don't have a heart transformation.
There we go. That's that external, right?
Yeah.
They're modifying. Everybody wants to mod up, right?
Yeah.
They're modifying on the outside, but nothing's changing in here, right?
And so they walk around their flowing robes and those titles, but in the end, they ain't doing nothing. That's why people are suffering in church and everywhere else, because they don't have qualified people there to help them. So churches, why don't you utilize that ex-drug dealer? Why don't you utilize that woman who was on dope or was an ex-prostitute? Why they don't have their own ministry? So therefore, people can come off the streets and hear something real versus hearing all this, God gonna do this, God gonna do that, and you ain't preparing the people to have a heart transformation or be ye transformed by the renewing of their mind. So now they're going on just being, you know, zombies. This is like Joyce Meyer say, this is the way we go to church, and end up being the same person they was all their life.
Yeah.
So that's why people don't come to church. I heard one of my buddies, shout out to Junior, Philip Moore Jr. He said, the reason why people don't go to church, because of people that go to church. So utilize the people, have them change and have experience, so therefore we can make a difference. And quit all this shouting and running around and overshadowing the fact that we need help.
Can't buy freedom of the heart on Amazon.
No.
You can't get it same day delivery.
No.
You got to transform your heart from the inside and work at it, brother. So,
That is work.
man, thanks for inviting me today to sit down and talk with you.
Much love, brother.
Man, yeah, good to see you again. Let's do this again, man. Let's do this again.
This is one of many more to come.
Yeah.
Y'all be blessed.
Yes.
Peace.
Yes.